Understand the purpose of stories about historical events so people to use the storytelling skills developed in the preceding projects to tell a story about a historical event or person.
NEG.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. A long time ago in France, around the 1700s, a woman named Fanny Roussel and her husband, Hercule, are being accused of treason by the country of France. You see, they're accused of housing one of the most wanted Englishmen who roams around France. His name is Scarlet Pimpernel. And right now they face the guillotine, and they're pleading to the council to spare their own lives. You see, Fanny and Hercule were a middle-aged couple who ran a coffee shop. It's kind of a coffee shop that would have people coming to the city would stop there and eat. Most of their customers came around noontime. They lived about 9 miles from a city called Calais. So all their customers would come around noon, they would stop by, have something to eat, and then they would go off to the city. At nighttime, they would never get any customers. It was so silent that you could literally hear the wolves. And not only because there was no customers, it was also because they didn't live by anyone. They were in the middle of nowhere. Then, 3 days ago, Hercule, he heard at 8 o'clock at night some footsteps. And then he heard someone yell, "Halt!" And then all of a sudden he heard a knocking on his door. He opened it, and there were 4 soldiers. Now these soldiers, they were dressed the same way that the Calais, the city soldiers, were dressed. They called them the 9th Regiment Line Soldiers. So they were dressed exactly how they were. And they said, "In the order of the people of the Protection Committee, we are here." And Hercule said, "Well, what do you want to do with us? We're just poor hotelers." And the soldiers said, "Well, all we want is some shelter and some food." Now Hercule, he was a soldier himself when he was younger. So he let them in, and he said, "Well, we have some soup for you. And you could actually sleep right here in the dining room." So the soldiers said, "Yeah, we'll take the soup, but we don't really want to sleep in the dining room on the benches. We need something where we can be more alert. We actually prefer if we would sleep in the outhouse, right in your front yard." Now, Hercule thought this was a little odd, if they want to sleep in the outhouse when they can sleep in the warm room. At this time it was a blizzard, so it was very cold. So that was he had kind of some suspicion. But nevertheless, he wanted to find out why they wanted to sleep there. And they said, "Well, we're on the lookout for someone. There's supposed to be someone coming in town, and you're the only house in the nearest 9 miles from the next town." The next town was Andreas. So they had to stop here. So that's why they wanted to stay. So Fanny, his wife, she made him the soup, and then Hercule showed him to the outhouse to sleep. He set up the hay and everything, made it nice, and then he went back to the house to go to bed. But instead of going to bed, he discussed with Fanny, his wife, what just happened. They were just saying, are these people for real? Are these really soldiers? And then after talking for a while, they decided that Hercule would go to town, the Calais city, and make sure these soldiers are real. So he looks out the front door where the outhouse is, and he tries to look if they're still awake. And he notices 2 of them are still awake, and they're kind of walking around the front of the door, and the other 2 are sleeping. So he decides to go out the back. And he walks out the back door, and they have a cabbage field. So he has to walk about 200 meters of the cabbage field, and he'll get to the main road, which looped around. So he goes outside, it's freezing, he gets all his paperwork, because he needs identification. He walks through the cabbage field. Right at the end of the cabbage field, when he hits the main road, all of a sudden he sees some more soldiers. These soldiers are dressed exactly how the other soldiers are, and they yell to him, "What's your name?" And he says, "My name is Hercule. Here's my citizenship papers to prove who I am." And then the commander of the soldiers says, "Oh, that's fine. Have you seen these 4 men that are dressed exactly like us?" And he said, "Yes, well, yes. I actually came here to tell someone about that." And he said, "Well, where are they?" He said, "They're at my outhouse." So then the other soldiers that the commander is commanding, they cheer. They're like, "Yes, and he sends him right away to the cabbage field to Hercules' outhouse. And Hercules asks the commander, I was suspicious of these people, what's going on? He said, well, you did real well, citizen. One of those people is the famed Scarlet Pimpernel, the wanted Englishman. So him and the commander follow the soldiers back, and Hercules, instead of going to the outhouse, he goes inside and tells his wife, Fanny, what happened. So they're waiting inside the house, and then they hear all this clutter, they hear swearing, they hear shouting, they hear fighting, they even hear gunshots. And then some time pass, and they're waiting in their main room, their coffee room, which overlooks the outhouse. And all of a sudden, this tall person, one of the soldiers, walks in. And right away they look at him, and he's smiling. And then he gives them this look. And Fanny right away knows that something's wrong. Now these were the person who walked in was the soldiers that came the night before. And right away she knew that was Scarlet Pimpernel, the wanted Englishman. So she screams, and she yells at her husband, run away, run away. So by the time he runs away, Scarlet's men, who are the phony soldiers from the first time, they run after him, they bound and gag him, and they also take Fanny and they bound and gag him and they put him upstairs. The next morning, their maid comes. The maid comes in, looks at them, she unties them, she's very distressed, and Fanny and her husband go downstairs and they see all the uniforms that Scarlet left, the fake uniforms, they see all the fake passports, how they got to town. Then they go to the outhouse and they see the soldiers that Hercules got from the cabbage field. They untie the soldiers leave. They go back to their base. Then all of a sudden, later that day, the next afternoon, more troops come and they arrest Hercules and Fanny. Now, Hercules and Fanny are faced with treason for aiding and abetting the famed, wanted Englishman, Scarlet Pimpernel. And all Fanny says is, if I did anything wrong, it's because I ran into the devil himself, Scarlet. Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Eddie. Our next presenter is Guy. He needs a couple minutes to set up here. And the name of the Guy's speech is Influential People. And this will be a 5 to 7 minute speech. And Eddie, you're going to read?
I'm going to read.
I'm sorry, Prez, you're going to read the...
So Guy is giving his project number 8, which is a speech that's designed to get him comfortable with using visual aids. And the 2 main objectives of the speech are, number 1, select visual aids that are appropriate for your message and the audience. And number 2, use visual aids correctly with ease and confidence.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about influential people. The reason is that I want to be an influential person one day. And I think many of us want to be influential, or we look up to influential people, we want to be like them, we want to emulate them, we want to say, oh,